The email came in at 9:14 a.m. Subject line, Ownership Transfer Confirmation. I opened the attachment while standing at the kitchen counter, coffee still in my hand. The PDF loaded slowly, and when the first page appeared, my stomach tightened. The document said the majority stake in the company had been reassigned to my sister. I scrolled down and saw the signature block. Electronically signed, Melissa Grant. My name. My hand started shaking slightly. I set the coffee down and leaned closer to the screen. The timestamp read 11:57 p.m. I had been asleep. That was the moment my family revenge story actually started, even though I didn't know it yet. Our company was a logistics brokerage my father built from a single desk and a phone line. 20 years of contracts, carriers, and client relationships. When his health started failing, I stepped in to handle operations, payroll, vendor contracts, client negotiations. My sister Danielle handled marketing and new accounts, conferences, sales calls, relationships. It worked because we stayed in our lanes. When Dad passed 3 years ago, the company transferred to both of us, 50% each. We signed the estate paperwork in his attorney's office, quiet room, stacks of documents, Danielle sitting across from me at the conference table. We both agreed the company would stay in the family. At the time, I believed that mattered. Now I was staring at a document that said Danielle owned 75%. I opened the file properties, created 8 days earlier, modified 2 days ago. The transfer had already been processed, or so it appeared. I opened my laptop and logged into the company banking portal. 2 withdrawals from the operating account, $48,000, $52,000, both labeled owner distribution, authorized the previous evening. We had never taken distributions without discussing them first, not once. Cash flow in logistics can swing fast. Pull in money unexpectedly could hurt payroll or carrier advances. I clicked the activity log. Both approvals came from Danielle's credentials at 6:42 p.m. At 6:42 the night before, I had been in the office finishing a freight contract. Danielle had left around 5. I went back to the transfer document, zoomed in on the digital signature certificate attached to my name. Something looked off. The certificate field that normally listed verification credentials was blank. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I screenshotted it. Around noon, Danielle walked into the office. She acted completely normal, set her laptop down, asked if I had sent freight quotes to a client in Dallas, mentioned a conference she wanted to attend in Chicago. Then she said something strange. We should probably talk about leadership changes soon. Said it casually, while scrolling through emails. I didn't respond. I watched her from across the room and told myself there had to be another explanation. There wasn't. That evening I stayed late. I pulled the company document archive and opened the corporate filing website for our state. A new filing had been submitted 4 days earlier. Ownership amendment, submitted by Danielle. Attached was the exact transfer document I had received that morning. The filing included a form labeled board authorization, except we didn't have a board, just the 2 of us, which meant any authorization required both signatures. Mine was there, again, digitally signed. I started taking screenshots, the bank transfers, the filing record, the document timestamps. I emailed everything to myself and saved copies to a private cloud folder. Then I kept reading. Halfway through the shareholder agreement, I found a reference I had forgotten. Founder contract reference. It pointed to a separate agreement my father had drafted years earlier when the company expanded. I searched the archive. After 15 minutes, I found it. Founder contract, original expansion agreement, 8 pages. Most of the document described operational responsibilities and profit distribution. Then I reached page 6, a section titled Ownership Transfer Validation. I leaned closer to the screen. The clause explained that any change in ownership required verification through the founder contract. Verification meant something specific. Every legitimate ownership transfer had to include a matching contract ID embedded in the digital signature certificate. Without that ID, the transfer wouldn't register as valid under the corporate structure. I opened Danielle's transfer document again, zoomed in on the signature certificate. There was no contract ID. I checked again, still nothing. Then I opened the original founder contract signature page. At the bottom was the ID number Dad had registered with the company records. Every official ownership change had to reference that number. Otherwise, the transfer was automatically void. I sat back and stared at the screen. Danielle had filed documents, moved money, submitted a state amendment. But she missed something. She forgot about the contract. The next morning, I called the attorney who had handled my father's estate. I emailed him everything: the transfer filing, the bank withdrawals, the founder contract clause. He read through the documents while I stayed on the phone. There was a long pause. Then he asked one question. "Did you authorize any of this?" "No." He explained what the clause meant. The founder contract was still legally binding, tied to the company's original corporate structure. Any ownership change had to pass through that verification system. Without the contract ID embedded in the digital certificate, the transfer had no legal standing. The company ownership hadn't changed. Not at all. But the bank withdrawals were real, and the state filing was public record. So we needed to act quickly. That afternoon, he filed 2 documents: a notice disputing the ownership amendment, and a request to freeze all owner distributions until the dispute was resolved. The bank responded the next morning. Both company accounts were temporarily restricted. No withdrawals, no distributions. I still refreshed the banking page every few hours. Just checking. 2 days later, Danielle called me. Her voice sounded tight. She said the bank had locked the accounts. I told her I knew. She said the state had flagged her ownership filing. The verification number was missing. The filing was under review. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her the company documents required founder contract validation. There was a long silence. Then she asked where that requirement came from. "Dad's contract," I said. A week later, the attorney handling the dispute contacted Danielle directly. He explained that the ownership transfer wasn't valid. He also informed her the $100,000 in distributions needed to be returned until ownership was formally clarified. 3 days later, the money reappeared in the operating account. both transfers reversed. The state amendment filing was withdrawn. The public record still shows it was submitted, but it no longer shows any change in ownership. Danielle stopped coming into the office after that. Communication moved through attorneys. Eventually, her lawyer proposed a buyout discussion. For now, the company structure hasn't changed. 50% mine, 50% hers. Exactly the way Dad left it. The founder contract still sits in the archive folder. 8 pages. Page 6 hasn't changed. The verification clause is still there. And the contract ID still appears in every legitimate document we sign. My father wrote that clause years before he got sick. I don't know if he imagined something like this happening, but he built the protection anyway. He forgot a lot of things toward the end. He didn't forget about the contract. I used to think what happened to us was unusual. Then I started hearing how often families try the same thing.